This is Trial Transcripts Exposed by Crime in Court with Heather. Raw courtroom reads with my commentary. Let's dive in. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Crime in Court with Heather. This is Trial Transcripts Exposed, and we are reading through the Delphi trial, the Richard Allen, Indiana versus Richard Allen case in the homicides of Libby German and Abby Williams, two young teenagers, preteens, who were found in the woods in Delphi, Indiana, and we are continuing on with the correctional officers. So if you stayed for the whole episode last time, or the whole read through, Nick McLeland said that there were 9 correctional officers that he is calling to the stand. Why so many? I don't know. I think maybe all of them have some kind of confession or something. Because if the last 3 that we just went through, there was some kind of the pattern, the reason they were there was to say some kind of confession or something odd happened. They were basically there as the self-unaliving companion. They used a different word that I can't say on here, and it then became he was being watched 24/7, sometimes by inmates and sometimes by officers. And then it changed to only officers. So these officers watched him 24/7 and they're here to read their notes. And we know that some of them may or may not have had Odin patches on their prison guard suits or uniforms. One of them, even once they were told to take them off, one of them got a tattoo of an Odinist symbol on their face. So don't tell me that these people don't have ties to Odinism, and now we're supposed to trust their word. And the jury doesn't know this. The jury doesn't know that these people could possibly have ties to Odinism and maybe have some kind of motivation to get Richard Allen to take the heat for this crime. You know, maybe. I don't know. All right. So, with that thought, let us continue on with reading. We've got a lot to get through because we have the testimony of 3 officer, oh, 4, James Early, John Miller, and Brandon Frazier. And then in the next episode, we'll have 2 more, I believe. So, all right. Um, the court, we went off the record after that last round of correctional officers that really said a whole lot of nothings. And now we're back on the record. The court says if the state is ready to have our jury come back. Mr. McLeland says, I am, Judge. Court says, okay. Mr. Rosie, are you okay? Or I'm sorry, are you ready? Mr. Rosie, are you ready? He says, yes, ma'am, I am. Thank you. The court says, thank you. Yeah, we've turned the air on. It's really hot in here with all these people. And Ms. Auger says, thank you. The court says, it said it was 74, so it feels a lot hotter than that up here. I'm looking at the audience and lots of fanning going on. The bailiff says, all rise. He then says, after the jury is seated, or jury comes in, he says, thank you, you may be seated. The court says, thank you, gentlemen. All right, thank you, gentlemen. All right, Mr. McLeland, you may call your next witness. Mr. McLeland says, Your Honor, the state of Indiana would call Officer James Early, please. The witness is sworn in, and McLeland says, Thank you, Judge. This is now the direct examination of James Early. Officer, before we get started, I'm going to ask you to speak up. He tells everybody the same thing. Use your best outside voice so that I can hear you, so the jury can hear you, and the people at the defense table. The microphone, it doesn't amplify for anybody but the audience, so we really struggle at times to hear people. Fair enough? Yes, sir. So you don't need to lean into the microphone. Just talk normal, all right? You just said use your best outside voice. Yes, sir. Will you state your name, please? James Early. And will you spell your last name for me, please? And he does. And how are you employed? With the state of Indiana, Department of Corrections at Westville Correctional Facility. How long have you been employed as a correctional officer? Since November of 2006. So he started right before the homicides. The homicides were in 2017 on in February. So he started not that like he wasn't working there for very long before the crimes happened. And when you were came on as an employee of the Indiana Department of Corrections, did you go through special training or schooling to be a correctional officer? Yes, sir, training. Can you tell me about that? I went through several weeks of everything from personal protection to manipulation to restraints, mental health, and some medical training. And what shift do you work at the Department of Correction? I group, which is a day shift from 5:45 a.m. to 6 p.m. And what unit within the facility do you work with? Custody. And are you familiar with an individual by the name of Richard Allen? Yes. And how are you familiar with him? He was held in an area where I worked at Westville. And when did you first come into contact with Mr. Allen, if you know? Late October, I'm sorry, late 2022, 2022. And at some point when Mr. Allen was housed at the Westville Correctional Facility, were you asked to be his self-unaliving companion? Yes. And how often did you do that? I was rotating throughout regular shifts, but for several months, at least a part of every shift. And so would you see him on a constant basis or a consistent basis? Yes. And would you work as a companion on a consistent basis? Yes. And I'm just saying companion because I can't say the other word, and self-unaliving companion is too long to say. So, and as you're participating and acting as a companion, would you fill out paperwork coinciding with that task? Yes. Can you tell me about that? It was a companion sheet and watch sheet that we would use. It was on a 15-minute schedule that we, and anything that happened in between. But at least every 15 minutes, documentation needed to be made. But anything that happened at any time would be documented. But every 15 minutes, there needed to be an entry into the log. And while you were doing those logs, did you make those entries in real time? Yes. I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 296. Are you familiar with this packet of documents? Yes, sir. And what are those? It is the entry from from April 8th, 2023 and April 9th and May 1st of 2023. And do you know these sheets to be a companion watch report? Yes. And who is the author of these reports that you're holding? I am. How do you know that? My name is on the top and my initials at the end of each entry. And would these entries reflect what you observed and what you heard from Mr. Allen during these time periods as a companion? Yes, sir. Judge, the state would move to admit what's been marked as State's Exhibit 296, please. It's offered. Mr. Rosie says, no objection. The court says, all right, without objection, 296 is admitted. And Judge, I'd ask the court permission to go through the same procedure to publish these to the jury so they can follow along with my next line of questioning. You may, she says. Thank you, Judge. The, the State's Exhibit 296 is published, so the jury and anyone in the room can probably see it. If you are at an angle where you can see it, wherever it is. The court says, we're missing one. Mr. Rosie says, I'm sorry. The court says, Juror 12 needs one. Mr. McLeland says, I had an extra one, so it makes sense. Does anybody have one? Does everybody have one now? The court says, yep. Mr. McLeland says, okay, thank you, Judge. Officer Early, I want to draw your attention to the first sheet, April 8th of 2023, and I'm going to draw your attention to 4:33 p.m. Can you tell the jury what statement Richard Allen made on that date and time? Yes. At 4:33 p.m., he said, "I am ready to confess." While he was pacing back and forth, then he said, "I swear to God, I killed Abby Williams and Libby German. Fuck me running." Huh? Now, I want to draw your attention to the last sheet in that packet, May 1st of 2023. I'm going to draw your attention to 8:50 a.m. What statement did he make? Say that one more time, please. Sure. May 1st of 2023 at 8:50 a.m. At 8:50, Mr. Allen was walking, mimicking Officer Early's movements and asking random questions. Can I confess to the warden and Dr. Walla? If he was being drugged against his will, as we know he was, and he was being isolated from everyone and everything in his life, and being kept in this tiny little gray cell, being treated like he's a rabid dog more so than a human. And don't you think that maybe if there were people telling him you need to confess, or they were trying to get into his head and be like, you did it, just confess. If they had some kind of motivation to not have the heat on them, perhaps, saying it would be possible for any one of the people that did come in contact with him, which would be all of the officers, the correctional officers, the prisoners that were his companions, Dr. Walla, the warden, anyone else that visited him while he was there, uh, he would be, I don't know, I totally lost my train of thought. Oh, anyone that he talked to could have been like in his ear saying like, "Hey, you did it. Just say you're ready to confess." When you have someone that's so fragile, especially mentally, their mental health is so fragile at this moment, you could make them do anything. You can take away anyone's liberties, complete strip down of all liberties, all uh your privacy is completely gone, everything is gone, they strip you down naked and they wash you down, rinse you, whatever, they do it all for you. Like you have no privacy, you have no discretion anymore. At that point, at some point, you're going to break, and it might be very easy for a guard, a psychiatrist maybe who might be a little unethical, to try to say, you did it. Just say so. Just tell the guards. Tell the warden. Say you're ready to confess to the crimes. You could easily get him to do it, I think, if you have someone in such a fragile state of mind, and you could easily get someone to lie and say that they did some crime just to get their freedoms back. You could even dangle a carrot in front of them and be like, you know what? You wouldn't have to live in here in this cell if you just confess. We might give you a better cell. You might be able to get to go home. That's the one that I love. You get to go home if you confess. How? And where on God's green earth is it possible where you could confess to a crime and then just go home that day? I don't know. But that's what officers love to say. So that always gets me. Like, really? You're going with that? And if anybody believes that, then they probably need someone there to be making better decisions for them. That's all I gotta say. All right, so let's get back to this. So he says he wants to confess to the warden and Dr. Walla. And those entries that you testified to, did you make those in real time? Yes. Meaning you made those statement, or you made those entries when Mr. Allen made those statements. Is that correct? Yes. I don't have any other questions, Judge. And now we have some cross from with Mr. Rosie doing the questioning here for the defense. Um, Mr. Rosie asks James Early, were you aware that he had already written a letter to the warden back in early April, April 3rd, 2023, confessing to these crimes? No. But he told you he wanted to confess to the warden and Dr. Walla on May 1st, 2023, right? Yes. You've been at the prison since you said that you started in 2016. Yeah, November 2016. So first time you ever remember having a safekeeper in that unit, isn't it? Yes, remember he was under a safekeeping order because they were saying that he wasn't safe in general population and they couldn't house him in the county jail and they needed that whatever. I don't know. It was improper and it was um there was no end date and they just kept him in there indefinitely for 13 months of cruel torture. And if you are going to argue with me over the word torture, you do the things that you go through, the things that Richard Allen had to go through. You eat your own feces because you're so mentally messed up because they're giving you large doses of Helidol and isolating you from everyone you've ever known and everything you've ever had in your life. You try it. Tell me that that's not torture. Like anyone who says that it's not, mm, volunteer to go do it then yourself. All right. Anyway, so this is the first time safekeeping in that unit, isn't it? Yes. And you said you interacted with Rick shortly after he arrived? Yes. He was a quiet guy? Yes. Docile? Yes. Non-confrontational? Yes. You said he looked like he was a deer in headlights when you first saw him come in the prison? Yes. And at some point you said his behavior just changed, right? Yes. Maybe he was getting Halidol at that moment. He flipped the switch, I think, were the words you used. Yes. Almost like he lost his mind. That's what you said, didn't you? Your words. What's that? I've never used those words. He just changed. You listened to your recording, right? Yes. You said he was eating the Bible? Somebody told me that he was eating a Bible. And that disturbed you because you were a Christian, right? They told me that, saying you might want to go down there early. He's eating a Bible. They knew you were a Christian. That's what you're saying? Yes. But he never said anything of any detail about how he killed the girls, did he? Just that he did it. All right. All of the confessions were generic, weren't they? To the point. And you said at one point his behavior started getting more bizarre? Yes. He was dipping a cup in a toilet and drinking out of it. Yeah. He was standing in front of the toilet and he was just sitting there, sort of thinking about it. Again, I looked at his back or at his backside, and then he finally took a drink, thought about it, spit it out, and sat down and ate the tray that he had been provided earlier. Ate the tray. He was sticking a fork in his genitals? A spork. A spork. So a spoon slash fork combination. And was sticking his fingers in his rear end. Yes. And he started collecting his feces, and you said rolling it into balls, right? And lining it up. He covered himself with feces, spit, and vomit, you said. Yes. But then, after a few months, he calmed down, right? Yes. And I think you said he was fairly docile in August when you saw him just before your interview with the police? Yes, I started working in another section of the prison but I worked one shift back there. Directing your attention to Exhibit 296, you have that in front of you, sir. Yes. There's an entry there on April 8th, 2023 at 4:29 p.m. Do you see that? At the top, yes. And could you tell the jury what words Rick Allen spoke to you on that day and time? I noted he was yelling, "Foxtrot, fuck, foxy lady, fuck me, running." Doesn't make sense. Did any of them mean anything to you? No, he just from time to time would mumble things, say things that made no sense at all, right? Sometimes. Let me direct your attention to April 8th, 2023 at 5:46 p.m. Did you make an entry there? April 8th at 5:23? 5:46, sir. Geez, I'm sorry. Yes. Is that the reference to him drinking toilet water? It's one of them. Or is that something different than what you said earlier? That would be a different one. This was a different time. Well, tell the jury what you observed at that time, April 8th, 5:46 p.m. He was attempting to drink toilet water again, and bottles of hot sauce were available off commissary, and he had a bottle of hot sauce and he was drinking that as well, mixed with the two. What's the last line say? The second line there? It appeared that he was urinating on his mat. Directing your attention to the second page of this exhibit, you made an entry on April 9th, 3:39. Those were observations of Mr. Allen that you made? Yes. Tell the jury what your observations were. 3:39, he was laying on the floor mumbling and raising his arms. And again at 3:55, same thing basically, mumbling? Yes. Lying on the floor, right? Yes. Directing your attention to April 9th, 2023 at 4:08 p.m. Do you see that entry? Yes. Was he sitting on the floor mumbling again? Yes. He do a lot of mumbling when you were watching him? Yes. That was kind of a common thing for him. Yes. Directing your attention to page 3 of this exhibit, April to May 1st, 2023 at 9:15 a.m. Do you see that entry? Yes. Did he tell you that he was already dead? Yes. And then the next entry, May 1st, 2023 at 9:30 a.m. Was he then pacing and mumbling again? Yes. Let me direct your attention to May 1st, 2023 at 10:15 a.m. You see that entry near the bottom? Yes. Did you make observations of Mr. Allen at that time? I did. And what were those observations? He was awake and saluting staff, asking for World War III. Okay. I believe he is Navy, or not Navy, but Army. I think he's military. I'm not sure. I think if it maybe Army. Don't quote me on that. So it would make sense if he was saluting staff, but asking for World War III, easy for me to say, is probably a little strange because even if he was, having like flashbacks of his time in the military, why would he be asking for World War III? I don't know. Okay. And 15 minutes later, he was asleep, right? Yes. And that was at 10:30 in the morning? Yes. You're sometimes warned about offenders who have mental health on that unit. Is that right? There are security management plans that are put in place for offenders that have had histories like that. Yes. And you said you're kind of used to seeing crazy people back there on that pod, right? It comes with it, yes. You were not warned about any mental health issues with Rick, were you? No, sir. So I don't know where I got sir from. It just says no, but I add sir apparently. Uh, so as far as you knew, you thought he was perfectly normal in terms of his mental health. Yes. I don't have anything further. The court says Mr. McLeland, and we have a little bit of redirect here. Mr. McLeland says, Officer Early, what did you think about the behavior that Richard Allen was displaying? Talking about this bizarre behavior, what did you think about that? It just seemed orchestrated. He had a normal look to where his eyes were big and he was just sort of there talking or taking it all in. But he was always, it was, yes, sir. And would you like rec and a shower today? Yes, sir. And would also say, thank you. What a horrible prisoner. He says, yes, sir, and thank you. Wow. Just put him on the electric chair. Why don't you? Like, what? Why is this a complaint? And then he went and I escorted him multiple times and all of a sudden he just would become dead weight and he'd decide to drool that day. Yeah, decide. We just forget to swallow our saliva all of a sudden. And you can control it like that. Is this guy nuts? But we would come out of it if he had a question, if there was something that he wanted, if he wanted to use the telephone, he would come out of the drooling session to ask for the phone. Okay, so he has moments of lucidity when he's being drugged. Gotcha. Specifically with the toilet incident, when he was drinking toilet out of the water, drinking water out of the toilet, it should be. You spoke about he kind of took a breath before he did it. Do you remember that testimony? I do. Oh, what is your thoughts on that? It's like you're about to jump in cold water. You're just thinking about it. I don't really want to do this, but I'm going to do it. And he did. I don't have any further questions, Judge. Thank you. The court calls Mr. Rosie back up and he asks him, the cell door is a solid steel door, isn't it? Correct. And it's got a small window, doesn't it? Correct. And you'd have to kind of make an effort to look in there through the window, wouldn't you? I can see in there pretty good. And so what you're observing is what's going on in the other side of that door, right? Correct. And the toilet's in the back of the cell, right? Correct. Pretty close to where he puts his head when he sleeps at night, right? The toilet on this side, about 3 feet. Bed on this side, yeah, about 3 feet, 4 feet in between. And you question the authority or the genuineness of his actions, is what you're saying? Correct. Are you aware that he was banging his head on the wall in his cell time and time again until he physically injured that? It was physically injured by that. Did you know that? Never that he did in front of me on my shift, or I would have noted it, but he made a lot of different movements. Okay. Are you aware that he was defecating in his hands and smearing that all over his body at one point? I watched him do it, yes. Okay. And do you question the genuineness of those activities too? That's not the first time I've seen that, and so wasn't new to me. But I've never had anybody just do that because there's a reason behind doing it, and it was just after watching him go through the spork incident and the toilet water drinking incident, it seemed to come off as somebody that was just doing the next thing that he could do. What? That doesn't even make sense. Like when I seen him with the spork and going into his genitals, it was like he knew that it would hurt and that wasn't for him. That the other end was easier, so he went that way, and the logical progression was to feces comes, so that's what's next. That's what's next. And you've seen that a number of times in there. Yes. People in there, convicted felons, right? Yes. Some of the worst people in society. They're pretty bad sometimes. Some of the most heinous people you could possibly come into contact with. Sometimes. And for those kinds of people, rubbing feces around their cell or on their body is kind of a normal behavior, right? You see that from time to time. Normal for where we're at, not necessarily normal behavior. Yeah, normal for WCU. It happens back there, but you only have so many tools at your disposal to try to get what you want, and that sometimes grabs attention. Well, there's something about that place that makes people do things like that, isn't there? Well, there's something about that action. Mr. McLeland says, Judge, I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question to be able to object, or I couldn't hear what Mr. Rosie's saying. I'm sorry. Mr. Rosie says, there's something about that place that makes people do things like that. Was Mr. McLeland says, I'm just gonna object to that. It calls for speculation. Mr. Rosie says, he works there. The court says, well, Mr. Rosie says, I don't think it calls for speculation. Sustained, of course. You can narrow it down, she says. Mr. Rosie says, thank you. I would say that not that it drives you to do that. If you're back there for more than a day or two, being housed back there, you realize that that's something that people do, and it's a tool that you can use to get what you would like. The tool that people resort to in prison to get something that they want. And then if that doesn't get the attention that's warranted, then you start eating it, right? I've seen that. That's normal behavior at WCU. If you are attempting to do something, there are people back there that just do that for their normal. But there are people that use it as a tool to get what they want, like I said before. So it draws attention right away because it makes everybody around them, when it starts permeating the air, the people that live in the adjacent to him start getting a little upset about it. So it draws a lot of attention. You did not answer the question. Is there some other act that you've seen in the WCU from an offender that you're like, hey, you know what? Now that guy's serious. No, it's not even, I wouldn't even put it that way. I would just, that it really isn't a case by case basis of what you're doing, but it's most of the time it's to get something. He can't even get his words out. That sentence was blah. I don't understand why we're accepting his testimony here. He seems pretty incredible. You weren't aware of any mental health issues that Mr. Allen may have suffered from the time that he came into that unit, are you? None at all. You think there are people in there that are really sick, that do have a mental health issues. I do. Do you think that there can be that could be one of the reasons why they act this way, mental health issues? I think anybody under that type of environment could, but for long enough could have some issues, but it's some people are put back there because they act that way. Some people are put back there and then start acting that way. Did you know Rick Allen was put back there because he was awaiting trial in this case? Well, we were told we had a safekeeping coming in, and I had not had that happen in my time there. Yeah, so if you found out that Rick Allen did have a serious mental illness, might you feel differently about his actions? Only if it only if it affected my day-to-day operation of how I was doing something. I would be aware of it, but I it wouldn't change what I do other than taking precautions. What? His answers are not even responsive to the question. I would say he can't because it's his cross, but I would say that these are unresponsive. Hold on, I need some water. Yeah, I don't like this guy's answers. They're very all over the place. My question is this. If you found out that he had a serious mental illness, would you feel differently about the genuineness or the authenticity of his actions? mental health, that wouldn't come into I do the same operation no matter what I'm dealing with, so I just take different precautions. So I wouldn't have any thought whether or not why he's in there has nothing to do with my day to day. It's just how he acts is how I interact with him. So if I have no feeling what if I have no feeling what any of them are in there for. It's not why I'm there. You are not answering the question, sir. Are you done? That's great. Mr. Rosie's like, "Are you done just tra-la-lying about a bunch of stuff that I didn't even ask?" He says, "Yes. Earlier, Mr. McLeland asked you what your opinion was about whether or not he was acting genuinely. Do you recall that?" "I do." "And what I gleaned was that you weren't convinced that this was genuine, that he might have been faking it." "That would be fair to say." "So my question is, if you found out that he had serious mental health illness, might you feel differently about that opinion?" Mr. McClellan says, "Judge, that's been asked and answered." Overruled because he hasn't answered it. Um, the witness says, "No, I have, a lot of people back there have security management plans and they're severe mental illness, and other than taking precautions I have no for my personal safety and the safety of the officers with me and the offender safety is all that comes into play. Doesn't matter whether they're, if I have, it doesn't matter. I do the job the same way. So it does. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but it wouldn't matter if I knew that he was, it wouldn't matter to the way I'm doing my job. So appreciate that. You're treating everybody back there the same?" "Yes." "So Rick Allen wasn't quite like every other offender in this facility, was he?" "No. He was what we call safekeeping, and he just had access to things and a lot more visitors than most." Based on that was the answer? He had more access to things? I don't know. I don't believe that to be true. "Based on your experience as somebody who's worked there for several years, if somebody had a serious mental illness and they were locked up in solitary confinement for weeks and months on end, do you agree that that probably would be detrimental to their mental health?" "Yes." I have nothing further. The court says, "All right, does anybody have a jury question?" Would counsel approach? Got a question. So we have a sidebar conducted. The court's reading the question, and the question is, do you know how long Mr. Allen was on self-unaliving watch? Mr. McClellan says that's okay. The court says, was Mr. Allen in the same cell for 13 months? Okay with that, says Mr. Rosie. McClellan says, I'm okay with that. The court says, if someone's on self-unaliving watch, what is allowed to be in the cell with them? I'm okay with that. McClellan says yes. The court says, is there anyone in the courtroom that was a fellow employee of yours? Mr. Rosie says, I don't have any clue what that means. Mr. McClellan says, yours being the witness or yours. The court says, yeah, I would assume. Mr. McClellan says, I don't have a problem with it. It's an inappropriate question. I don't know what he's going to say, but the court says it's appropriate, or it is appropriate, if he knows. And then something inaudible, there's DOC in the back that are lawyers. So there are Department of Correction lawyers in the room. Mr. McClellan says, yeah, that's what I was looking for. They're sitting in our seats. The court says, and they're allowed to be. Mr. Rosie says, I don't think it's relevant to anything that we've talked about. That's my opinion, and I'm not trying to be a jerk about it. The court says, I don't disagree. Sidebar concluded. So are you reading it or not? I don't know. We'll find out. Now this is in front of the jury. Um, and she asks, Mr. Early, do you know how long Mr. Allen was on self-unaliving watch? Well, he was, when he came in, I don't know exactly when he got to Westville, But when he came into Westville, he was taken directly back to the same cell that he was in, other than a receiving cell when he got there, and then taken to his permanent cell, which is a self-unaliving watch cell from when he first got there, and that was just where he was placed because it was the safest place for him. The way it is at Westville is it's open dorms in general population, and back there are the only individual cells we have. So it's not like a traditional prison, it's open dorms. So that's the only place he was at. Mr. McLeland, the court asks, Mr. McLeland, any follow-up? McLeland says, no, Judge, thank you. The court says, Mr. Rosie, no, ma'am. Next question, was Mr. Allen in the same cell for 13 months? To my knowledge, yes. Mr. McLeland, no, Judge. Mr. Rosie, no, ma'am. When someone is on self-unaliving watch, what is allowed to be in the cell with them? It can carry, or it can vary. Sorry, the witness says it can vary, but as far as he didn't have any restrictions. And being in safekeeping, he was allowed to have you can sign up for a tablet, anybody can get it. He was given a tablet that has Wi-Fi, and he could have a portable or it was just handheld phone that we would give him, the same phone that other offenders used. He asked for a phone, we could give it to him. If he wanted to go to the rec yard, he could have a phone there. He would get reading material. He asked for a Bible, got a Bible. What does this have to do with anything? There's other just literature that was around that he could read. Any material that was provided to him by his counsel, other than that, food items, 3 meals a day are passed through the door to him. McLeland says, or sorry, the judge says, McLeland, any follow up? And we have a little bit. McLeland says, was he also allowed to have commissary? Yes. Did that allow him to have food in addition to 3 meals a day? Yes. Did that also allow him to have extra clothing? Yes. And he was allowed to have that in his cell with him? Correct. Did he have access to a TV at some point? I do not believe he had a TV. All right. They are available back there, but I don't believe he has one. McLeland says, okay, I don't have anything else, Judge. Thank you. Mr. Rosie? You said he could get a phone like other offenders, is what you said? Yeah, there's phone privileges. Is that what you said? Yes. So he's not an offender, though, is it? Is he? It's an offender felon, is what it's called. So get the phone like the offenders back there do. Huh? Like all the other people that have been convicted of crimes, you were grouping him into that category, weren't you? Well, he was part of my rounds. I understand that. It's easy to do because, yeah, he just falls in with all the rest of them, right? Except that we recorded something that we did with him, and he was in the cell with a camera where the others were not. He was. So you talked about what he had in question was generally what he had in his cell. It's actually true that when he was on self-unaliving watch, they wouldn't give him blankets, right? I would not be the one that made that decision, so I'm not sure that he had a restriction on blankets or not. Well, there's a uh, self-unaliving blanket that actually is administered to these people, aren't there? It's a smock, right? But it's really a blanket. It's like a Fred Flintstone type garment. Yeah, I preferred it to I referred to it as a caveman. There you go. A caveman gown one time. Does that sound right? Yes. And do you agree that it's not very concealing, that you have to be kind of careful when you wear those because there's places it's down past that. It's past that. It's okay, let me finish. down past anything you can be modest about. Can I finish, please? Uh-huh. Um, that there are areas on your body that you have, like your private parts, you got to be a little careful about when you've got those smocks on, right? Sure. So there's an adjustment period of learning how to wear the one of those, right? I would say so. It kind of looks like a flak jacket that you just flip over you. I have no idea what that is. Doesn't it? Yes. And there are times when they actually take away things when you're on this self-unaliving watch. They give them to the evening, they get they give them to you in the evening like your blanket, then they take them in the morning, right? I don't work nights, so not something I would do. Okay. Or that I'm familiar with. Okay. He doesn't know diddly squat. Okay, I had to pause for a minute and go get some coffee because this is boring. Some of it is a little bit boring, like I work nights, something, yeah, whatever. Let's just get to it. So cheers to anyone who needs afternoon coffees to record or get through their day. So he says, I don't work nights, so not something I would do. Okay. Or that I'm familiar with. You mentioned commissary, right? Commissary is done, but it's done on night shift. Offenders can get commissary, right? They can. And sometimes there's a lot of rules about how to get commissary, isn't there? There's restricted items and there's certain things you can't order. And so Mr. McLeland says, Judge, I'm going to object at this point. It's outside the scope of the question from the jury. The state doesn't have any opportunity to redirect, so I'm going to object. Sustained. Mr. Rosie says, I have nothing further, Your Honor. Court says, all right, you may step down, but may I have the exhibit, please? The witness says, yes. The court says, thank you. The witness says, sorry. The court says, you're fine. All right, you may call your next witness. Mr. McClellan says, thank you, Judge. The state of Indiana would call Officer John Miller, please. So another correctional officer. Surprise, surprise. And now I'm getting really hot because I'm drinking hot coffee, so the fan's got to go on too. Okay. So we are going to begin direct examination of John Miller. Mr. McClellan says, Mr. Miller, good afternoon. I'm struggling with hearing people today, and so I'm going to ask you to speak up, blah, 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 blah. He says that to everybody. Let's just skip to perfect. Will you state your name, please? John Miller. And will you spell your last name for me? And he does. And how are you employed? I'm a correctional officer at Westville Correctional Facility. And how long have you been employed there? Approximately 6.5 years. And before you became a correctional officer, did you have to go through special training or schooling to become a correctional officer? You go through correctional training through the facility. And what shift do you work? A group, night shift. And can you tell me the hours of that shift, please? 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. And what unit do you work in within the facility? I work in APOD, WCU segregation. And are you familiar with the individual by the name of Richard Allen? Yes, sir. How are you familiar with him? I watched over him while he was at our facility. And did you start observing him as soon as he came into the facility? No. When did you start observing him? A few months after he arrived. At some point during your tenure as a correctional officer during your duties, were you assigned to be his self-unaliving companion for Richard Allen? Yes. If you recall, when did you begin that? around January or February of 2023. Did that continue throughout Mr. Allen's stay at Westville? Yes. And did you monitor him as a companion on a regular basis? Yes. And so each time you came on shift, was there a period of time during your shift that you were assigned as a companion? Yes. Okay, I want to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 297. Can you tell me what that document or what that packet of documents is? This is a companion watch sheet. And is that watch sheet something you fill out while you're assigned as a companion for Richard Allen? Yes. And who is the author of this sheet? Myself. How do you know that? My initials are on it. And what time period or what day is this watch sheet from? 4/9 of 2023. Mr. McClellan says, Judge, the state would move to admit what's been marked as State's Exhibit 297 into evidence. Mr. Rosie has no objection. The court says, all right, without objection, 297 is admitted. The court says, Mr. McClellan says, and Judge, I would ask the court's permission to go through the same procedure with the jury so that they can follow along with Mr. Miller as Mr. Miller testifies. So she publishes the exhibit and she tells him you can proceed. Mr. McClellan says, thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Miller, I'm going to draw your attention to that state's exhibit. And again, you testified that your watch sheet from April 9th of 2023, is that correct? Yes. I want to draw your attention to 6:58 a.m. Can you tell me what Mr. Allen said on that date and time? I killed Abby Williams and Libby German. And while he was doing this, what actions was he doing in the cell? He started flushing paper down the toilet. Then I want to draw your attention to the next page at 7:04 a.m. Can you tell me what Mr. Allen stated then? He stated that the funniest joke is how he killed them. And what was he doing at that time? Then he started to shout foul words at his shadow. What? I'm going to draw your attention to 7:24 a.m. on that same page. What did Mr. Allen state during that time? I got what I deserved for what I did, and I hope I burn in hell for what I did. Okay. Draw your attention to the next page at 7:55 a.m. What did Mr. Allen say then? I'm sorry for what I did, for killing them, but I don't care. Kill me. Was he crying during that time? Yes. And to draw your attention on that same page at 7:58 a.m., what did Mr. Allen say? I'm sorry I killed those kids. Draw your attention to the next page, please. I'm sorry, actually, let me make sure I got this right. Okay, I'm sorry, Mr. Miller. That's the last entry I want to draw to your attention. Judge, I don't have any other questions. The court says, Mr. Rosie, thank you. And now we go into cross-examination of this witness, Mr. Miller, John Miller. You've been here at Westville for 5 or 6 years? Yes. And you said that you were an OIC on APOD. Yes. That means you're like an officer in charge? Yes. On the midnight shift. Correct. And your first contact with Rick was back in November of 2022? Yes. You described him as that demeanor was normal? Yes. That he was kind of respectful, that in all aspects he was respectful? All aspects was respectful. He seemed emotionally stable when he arrived? Yes. At least as mentally stable as somebody can be that gets there, right? Yes. You said, I think you testified a few minutes ago that you started with your companion duty. I thought you said in January or February of 2023. Yeah. Is it possible that it might have been more like April when you pulled all the inmate companions? It could have been. I'm not 100% sure of the time frame. So the inmate companions versus the guard companions. The prisoners that were watching him were kind of being vulgar, weren't they? I wasn't on the range hearing them speak vulgarly. When we were out there, they weren't speaking at all. Do you recall providing or giving a statement to law enforcement officials on August 17th, 2023? Yes. And during that statement, did you tell those officers that the companions were being more vulgar to him and not being a companion? Yes. Is that what you said? We did not hear the vulgarity, but we were told of the vulgarity. You don't dispute that you told the officers that? No. You're not, you're just qualifying that you didn't hear it with your own ears. Yes. And that's what caused the companions to be pulled, one of the reasons, right? Yes. And you said in April he started refusing more meals as April grew closer. Yes. So, like in March, that would have started happening. Yes. And you said he wasn't talking in a sensical manner, right? No, he was not. And he went through a personality switch that you said, quote, you have not ever seen here. No, that's what you said. I have not ever seen it. So, yes, just admit, yes, I said that. I don't know why it's so hard for them to just say, yeah. And people don't understand. Like, you're not listening to the question, or they think they're going to get caught up in something. I don't know. So, when you're asked a question, just say yes or no. Sometimes it's easy just to say yes or no. Like, well, he said no, but it was like the wrong answer because, yeah, he answered incorrectly. Anyways, um, I have not seen it. So he's never seen anyone's personality change so quickly like that. But that's what happened to him, right? Yes. Now, there were times when he talked to you, when you were monitoring him, he was talking to you about his circumstances, right? Yes. I think you said that he said he didn't believe that somebody had turned him in. Yes. And he told you he probably killed his family? Yes. And his own. He probably killed his own grandkids? Yes. He told you that he molested his sister? Yes. He told you to kill him so his family could still be alive? Yes. And he told you he was sorry for everyone he killed, as if to say he killed many others? Yes. He told you that he may have touched his daughter, were the words you used? Yes. And he told you at one point that he was actually getting an erection in his sleep over all of this, right? Yes. And these log sheets here that Mr. McLeland in 297 that Mr. McLeland offered up, there's a reference in here to Old Bear Claw hypnotizing him, right? Yes. He was talking about Old Bear Claw? Yes. Does that make any sense to you at all? No. But something hypnotizing him, Old Bear Claw hypnotizing him. Was somebody trying to hypnotize him for real? It's very possible. That would make sense why he's confessing so much and saying all the things that he said so many times. If somebody was trying to hypnotize him and plant these ideas into his head that he did it. Wow. Does it make any sense to you? No. He was pacing around the cell, hitting the walls, right? From time to time, yes. He hit the door with his head and his hands. You reported that in your log sheets. Yes. You said he cried, sang, and he yelled out curse words. Yes. And he continued to do these things over a period of days, maybe even weeks, didn't he? Yes. I noticed on here, I'm starting to see a trend that he does a lot of mumbling. Is that right? Yes. Do you agree with me that there are people that end up on that unit, APOD, or in the WCU that have mental health issues? I'm going to object to the form of the question, says Mr. McClellan. Sustained. Do you agree that there are people that come to that unit that have mental health issues? Yes. Would you agree that if somebody had a serious mental health illness and they were locked in one of those cells for weeks and months at a time, that it could actually be detrimental to their mental health. Mr. McClellan says, Judge, a few foundational questions. Yes. Well, Judge, I'm not going to ask foundation. I'm just going to object to speculation. Sustained. May I ask? Oh, I'm sorry. You said sustained? Sustained. Okay. Thank you. Now we got to switch over to the next transcript. You took some training as a DOC employee? Yes. And a component of what was a mental health, there was a little mental health component to that, right? Yes. They trained you, they teach you, and kind of train you on how to recognize signs of mental health issues. Yes. And so, would you agree that if somebody has a serious mental health illness or a mental health problem, that locking them in one of those cells for long periods of time would not be, would, could be detrimental to their mental health? Yes. In other words, it could make it worse. It could. I have nothing further. The court says, Mr. McClelland, thank you, Judge. A little bit of a redirect here from Mr. McClelland. Mr. Rosie asked you about killing his family. I want to draw your attention to the exhibit on April 9th at 7:46. What did Mr. Allen say then? I only killed them to give my family more time to live, and I don't want to be free. Can't stop the bomb put in me. Hmm. None of the things he says, none of these things make any kind of sense, and none of it lines up with any of the facts of the case. And he didn't molest his sister. He didn't kill his grandkids because he doesn't have any. Like, all of the things that he confessed to don't make sense. Yet we're just taking it as, oh, he did it. These are confessions. But they don't line up with the actual crimes. So, how exactly are they confessions? When you have a mentally unwell individual being put in a cell for months at a time, it's insane to me. You guys like this coffee mug? This is my favorite coffee mug. I got it in San Francisco on like a family vacation a long time ago, and it has like all these cute little things. I don't know. I just love this little mug. I've had it forever. Back when I was like 18, 19 years old, I think. I love this mug. This is my favorite mug, and it's got a little heart on the other side. My mug. Anyways, sorry. Okay, so that was, I don't know what made me think of that. I just saw myself drinking. So he says this weird phrase, can't stop the bomb in me, and he killed the girls only to save his own family so that his family could live, which makes no sense. And then if you slide on down to 7:52 a.m., what did he say? You can't tell me if my wife is dead and it's because I had what I did and took their virgin years away. Huh? None of that even makes sense. And okay. Then finally, at 7:58 on that same page, I'm sorry I killed those girls. I was afraid that they would say my wife told me to do it and I may have touched my daughter, but I don't know. I can't remember. It doesn't really sound like a confession to me. It just sounds like a bunch of gobbledygook that someone doesn't understand really what they're saying. Mr. Rosie asked you about your mental health training. You were able to observe Mr. Allen and saw his behavior. Is that correct? Yes. And do you think at some point, his behavior changed when you were observing him? Is that correct? Yes. And you talked about his behavior becoming odd or strange. Is that right? Yes. Do you think when he was acting that way that his behavior was genuine? No. Why not? You don't go from a 12-hour period of being respectful, kind, and cordial in your speech to changing completely in 12 hours. This just goes to show how incompetent these officers are when it comes to mental health awareness, because being dosed with hell it all would absolutely change you completely. Being so drugged up out of your mind that you don't know which way is up and down, yeah, I think you might be, your personality might change. You might be staring at the wall and looking at the imaginary butterflies in your head. You know what I'm saying? He wasn't. mm, He just thinks it's fake. He thinks he's faking it because you just don't change overnight. Well, yes, sir, you do if you're being drugged, but I guess they don't care. And I believe you testified at least. Excuse me, I got a cough. Hold on. Sorry. I don't want to cough in the mic. All right. I believe you testified at least in a statement to police officers that you believed it was orchestrated and planned. Is that correct? Yes. Why do you think he was doing that? I'm unsure. Is Richard Allen here in the courtroom today? Yes. Can you describe what he is wearing? A paisley shirt, brown pants, brown shoes, and his glasses on his head. Mr. McClellan says, let the record reflect, Judge, please. Court says the record will so reflect. Mr. McClellan says, no other questions. Thank you, Judge. Court says, Mr. Rosie. And then we have some recross with John Miller. Mr. Rosie asks, so one of the themes I'm seeing in these log sheets, is that he's concerned about his wife, isn't he? Yes. Time and time again, he said he hopes to basically spare her, right? Yes. He never said anything to you in any detail about how he killed those girls, did he? No. They're all generic confessions, aren't they? Yes. He was being treated by a psychologist? Yes. Dr. Walla? Yes. And you agree with me that she would be in the best position to render an opinion about his state of mental health when he was there? Yes. Do you believe that he was experiencing a state of psychosis there at the prison during the months of April and May and even June? I can't speculate on that. I'm not a mental professional. So you'd leave it to them, right? Yeah. And you said earlier you can't explain why he would be acting that way, right? Nope. You don't know why somebody would stick a spork up there in their genitals? Judge, objection, asked and answered. He testified he can't explain it. Sustained. Can you explain why somebody would smear feces all over themselves? No, I cannot. Is one explanation maybe because the brain's not working right? I can't speculate on that. I wouldn't know. Seriously, asshole, you can't even admit that it might be because of mental health issues. You will not do it. Is it unreasonable for somebody to believe that? No. I don't have any further questions. The court says, all right, does anybody on the jury have any questions for Mr. Miller? And it looks like we do. So, questions from the jury to this witness, John Miller. First, they have a sidebar conference and they say, do you think it would be normal for someone to act like Mr. Allen while refusing to take their medication for a period of time? Mr. McClellan says, I'm okay with it. Mr. Rosie says, okay. Oh, that's it? The court says, yeah, that's it. So now this is in front of the jurors. Mr. Miller asks the court, do you think it would be normal for someone to act like Mr. Allen when refusing to take their medication for a period of time? It is possible. Mr. McClellan, any follow up? No, Your Honor. Mr. Rosie? No. Thank you, Mr. Miller. You may step down. You may call your next witness. And Mr. McClellan says, Your Honor, the state would call Brandon Fisher. So this is the next CO. Like all of these are just, it's repetitive and it's not, I don't think it's necessary to have all of these individuals coming up and basically saying basically they're all corroborating and saying Richard Allen was not in his right mind. So there's that. I don't know. I don't know what it's proving for the state other than, yeah, he may have made some confessions, but they're weird. They're not even like they don't even make sense. So how can you say that they go with this case? It doesn't fly with me. I don't like that excuse. So, yeah, we need to get to the bottom of this. Anyways, let us get back to our transcript. So, direct examination of Brandon Fisher. Mr. McLeland again says, "Sir, would you state your name, please?" Brandon Fisher. Mr. Fisher, how are you employed? Oh, currently? Yes, I'm employed. Okay. Mr. Rosie says, "I'm sorry." And at what? I'm sorry, I didn't hear what he said. Could you repeat the answer, sir? Says the court. He says, "I am employed. Yes." Oh, okay. Thanks. Let me back up. Mr. Fisher, I'm just going to have you don't need to lean into the microphone. It amplifies your voice to the audience, but not for us. But just use your best outside voice so we can hear you. Fair enough? Fair. Darn, I thought we didn't have to read it. So I'm really struggling with hearing people today, so I may ask you to speak up at times. Okay. Okay. So again, will you state your name, please? Brandon Fisher. And will you spell your last name? He does. At one point, were you employed with the Indiana Department of Corrections? November 7th, 2022 to June 1st, 2023. And which facility were you employed at? Westville Correctional Facility. And before becoming a correctional officer at Westville, did you go through specialized training or education? High school, a little bit of college, but no expertise. Okay. Did you go through special training with the Indiana Department of Corrections? Yes, before you became a correctional officer. Yes, I did a 2-month training from June 7th to January 7th of 2023. And what shift did you work while you worked with the Indiana Department of Corrections? I was on J Group. That's a 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. shift. And what unit within Westville did you work? WCU. And are you familiar with Richard Allen? Yes, I am. How do you know Richard Allen? I know Richard Allen from watching him, from watching over him. While you were employed with the Westville Correctional Facility? Correct. And at some point during your career there, were you assigned as a companion for Richard Allen? Absolutely. And did you do that? That's a weird way to answer. And did you do that on a regular basis during your shifts? Yes. And what time period were you assigned as a companion for Richard Allen, meaning that was it for the full year? Was it a period of months? How long were you assigned as a companion for Richard Allen? Oh, it was a period of months. And did you watch him each time you came on duty for your shift? Yes, that varied. Sometimes it could be 12 hours, it could be 4 hours. It just depended on the shift or on the staff. And while you were watching him as a companion, did you fill out logs coinciding what uh, my brain just did not want to pronounce that word for some reason. Did you fill out logs coinciding with that duty? Yes, I did. Can you tell me about those? What were they called? I mean, it's companion. I think I can't think of the name exactly. If I told you it was a self-unaliving companion watch report, would that be accurate? Accurate. I'm going to show you what's been marked as States Exhibit 301. Are you familiar with the documents within this packet? Yes. And what would you describe those as? What are they? Pretty much they're logs, you know? That answer. Just snorted. Pretty much they're logs, you know? That's a great answer to stay on the stand. I don't know, this is real professional. So the companion watch reports. Yes. And who is the author of those logs that you're looking at? That would be me. And how do you know that? Well, it's in my handwriting, my initials with the name. So your initials down the right side, those are yours? Yes. Judge, the state would move to admit what's been marked as Exhibit 301 into evidence, please. No objection. Uh, oh, wait. Yeah, he says 1 second, please, and then no objection. And then the court says, all right, without objection, 301 is admitted. And Judge, says Mr. McClellan, I know this is getting repetitive, but if I could follow the same process with the jury, I'd publish that so that they could follow along. The court says, you may. Mr. McClellan says, thank you. The court says, go ahead. McClellan says, thank you. Mr. Fisher, I want to go through this state's exhibit with you. First, I want to draw your attention to the first page, April 20th of 2023. I want to direct your attention to 6:25 p.m. on that sheet. What did Mr. Allen say during that date and time? 6:25. Richard claims he wants to talk to the warden and confess he is guilty. He said it 2 times, but I believe I was trying to say that it says per management. He always says that. Okay. And so at this point in time, he said it to you twice? Yes. Okay. And are you making those notes and taking those notes and logs in real time? Yes. Meaning, as he's saying those things, you're writing it down. Yes. Well, not exactly as he's saying it, but you have to make it a log. I believe it was like every 15 minutes of what he was doing. So if you remember it within that time period, then that's what you would do. You would go on, what he said, what his interactions were, what he was doing. I'm going to draw your attention to the next page on April 29th. Draw your attention first to 6 p.m. What did Richard Allen say during that time? Richard claimed he killed 2 girls in Delphi with a box cutter. He stole it and left it in the CVS trash. Hmm. He said he was tired and he keeps asking for a doctor from Delphi, and he keeps asking for my bottle of water, and he claims he wants to write a confession. I'm going to draw your attention to 7:45 on that same day. What did he say? He is now lying down on his mattress and he got up and took meds at 7:53. And so he took his meds on that day and time? Yes. I'm going to draw your attention to the next page on May 18th. Draw your attention to the time of 8:15 p.m. What did Mr. Allen say? He killed Abby and Libby. He had a small gash over his head from banging, which I'm going to say banging from on his little wall. I'm sorry, didn't hear what the judge. Could you ask him to repeat that, please? The court says, could you repeat that, sir? Oh, when I meant banging, when I wrote this, like he would do something like on his little window, like bang his head, not hard, but just that's just one of the things he did. And then, Mr. Fisher, I want to go back to, sorry, the second page on April 29th at 6:30 p.m. What did Richard Allen say then? Richard Allen continues to talk about Abby Williams and Libby German, says he was going to rape them, but not scare them, and then he panicked and killed them instead. I don't have any other questions, Judge. Thank you. Mr. Rosie, we're just supposed to believe that. Okay. And whatever. I don't know. I don't know. I really think a lot of the confessions were planted in his head by someone, or someone's trying to plant things into his head. Maybe he really was hypnotized or brainwashed or something while he was in there. We don't know what he was doing, what they were doing to him in there. They kept a lot of it, quiet, and they wouldn't even let his lawyers come and visit him without being filmed. It's crazy. All right, so Mr. Rosie to witness Brandon Fisher. I keep wanting to say Brandon Fraser, like the actor Brandon Fraser, every time I see his name, but Brandon Fisher. So you also provided a statement to the police on October 30th, 2023. Okay. Do you recall the police came up there talking to you? October 3rd? Yes, Mr. Harshman. Did you review that before you came in here to prepare for today? Yes. And there was some problems with the recorder when they came to speak with you at the very back end. So then they had to go back through it all again? No, we continued. Okay, so you worked at the DOC for about a year. Not a year, 7 months. No, 8 months, I believe. You got fired for providing false information on your application. Judge, I'm going to object. It's outside the scope of direct. Sustained. We got fired for providing false information on his app to his job. Although the jury's not really supposed to take that into consideration, but it's out there. They heard it. So when he asked him where he worked, or Mr. Rosie says, but he asked him where he worked. Sustained. It wasn't false, says the witness. No, 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 sir. I've sustained the objection. Okay, says the witness. You're not working there anymore? No. You never saw Rick do anything with ideations of taking his own life when he was there. From Richard? Yeah. To most people, it would look like it's self unaliving, but if you knew him, then it was just an act. So you know him? You know him. Wow. Okay. I can't even believe that this is allowed. How do these people, how can you even say that it's an act? How can you say that? How can you say that his intentions were this or that? It's like being able to provide thoughts inside someone's head. It's insane. Anyways, it was just an act, he says. Okay. Did you tell me that you never saw him do anything like taking his own life when I took your deposition on April 18th, 2024 up in LaPorte? I probably say yes. Okay. And you were never told anything about his mental health issues before you were in on that unit, were you? No. You never talked to Dr. Walla about him? No. You didn't even know who she was when I talked to you up in LaPorte, did you? No. Who he didn't know who Dr. Walla was. You said there were times when he was on his meds and times when he wasn't taking his meds? Correct. And you worked 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. Correct. So you weren't seeing anyone else on the unit really, other than the nurse, right? Occasionally. The nurse gives out meds at about in between 7 and 8. So, and you told me you weren't seeing any mental health staff between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m., were you? Okay, nurse, mental health staff. No? I seen the nurse, yeah. Well, but not mental health staff, right? No. Do you see what I mean? Like they're not even listening to the question. If you were, you wouldn't have such issues. Medical staff. No. You saw Richard with feces all over his face. Yes. And you would agree that that's strange behavior, right? Working in a prison, that's something you would see. Okay. Yeah, we've had this conversation. It's normal behavior in a prison, isn't it? I'd say on the outside, no, it's not normal. On the inside, yeah, you could see something like that. Yeah. The stuff that goes on inside that prison entirely different than the things that go on in normal society, isn't it? Great point. Yeah, that's correct. You said many times that Rick was precious cargo, is what you said, right? Yeah, and kind of upset you, didn't it? No. So precious that they locked him up in an 8 by 12 cell, right? Mr. McLeland says, I'm going to object to that, Judge, and the form of the question. Sustained. The witness says, Can I say something about that? No, sir, says the court. The witness says, Okay. The court says, You have to wait for the questions. The witness says, All right. You ever watch anybody in the time that you were there, the 7 months that you were there on that unit, that hadn't been in any trouble before? Repeat that. Have you ever been assigned to supervise anybody on that unit in the time that you were there that had not been in trouble before in their life? No, not one-on-one, no. He told you he killed the girls, right? Yes. And he told you with a box cutter, right? Yes. And he said he stole the box cutter, right? Yes. Did he tell you that he stole it from you? It says CVS. Okay. He stole it from the place where he worked? Okay. And he told you on April 29th of 2023 that he wanted to write up a confession, right? Yeah. And do you know he had already written a confession before that? No. Directing your attention to the entry on May 18th, 2023, you see that at 8:15 p.m. Strike that 8 o'clock. That would be the third page of your report, sir. May 18th at 8 p.m. Okay. Do you see that? Mm-hmm. Yes or no? Yes, I see it. Was Richard Allen banging his head on the door? Yes. And asking for somebody to read the Bible to him? Yes. And he said he killed Abby Williams and Libby German at 8:15, right? Yes. You noted that he had a small gash over his head? Yes. But he wasn't banging it very hard, right? No. But he still banged it enough that there was a gash. Okay. Yes or no? Yes, yes, yes. Now you said that some people didn't like monitoring him because they knew what he did, right? Yes. I mean, there were actually guards in there that didn't want to sit in front of him because of the things he had been accused of. Judge again asked and answered objection. Mr. Rosie says, well, I'm asking him to clarify that. Overruled. Mr. Rosie says, I'm sorry, Your Honor, I said overruled. He's probably like, what? Did you really just overrule uh, an objection in my favor? Like I won? That's probably why he's like, can you clarify that, please? Um, he says, right? Correct. So people were already treating him as if he had been convicted. That's false. Well, he told you he lost his virginity to his babysitter next door. He told you that one night, didn't he? Yeah, he did. Crazy stuff, wasn't it? Right? He was 11, he said? That's correct. Told you he was raped at 11. Age 11, right? That's correct. He also told you that the girls were screaming when he did this, didn't he? That's correct. Those are the words he used. Screaming? That's correct. You remember other inmates yelling at him, telling him to kill himself? Yes. Calling him a baby killer? Yes. You made some comments that he was acting like he was living in the 1300s or 1400s. Do you remember that? Yeah, I remember what I said. Yes. Like he was living in medieval times or something, right? Yes. And you knew that he was telling the truth because of the look in his eye. Is that what you said? That's correct. You have some special skills to look in people's eyes and determine whether or not they're telling the truth? No, I don't. I don't have anything further, says Mr. Rosie. The court says Mr. McLeland, and now we have a redirect. Write this timestamp down. Redirect with Brandon Fisher. Mr. McLeland asks, Mr. Rosie was asking you questions, and you testified that you believe the actions that Mr. Allen was displaying was an act. Do you recall that? Yes. Why do you believe it was an act? I believe it because when you're sitting there anywhere from 4 hours a night to 8 hours a night to 12 hours a night, what are you going to do? It's one on one, it's you and him. We spoke a lot, we had conversations. I never had any issue. We need to know what those conversations were. Like, that should all be disclosed. What were you talking to him about? Were you telling him that he did it? I never had any issue, like big problem with Alan, never to the point where, we would talk about his upbringing, his childhood, like, things like he liked to do. I remember he would always say, "Can you just read like Psalms 25 for me?" What did you say? I'm sorry. I'm just having a hard time hearing. He would always want me to read like a Bible verse for him because my thing was I would sit there and watch him and I would like read. At one point, you had a conversation with him about, or you heard him say something about when he put the feces on his face. Is that correct? That's correct. And he made a statement that stuck out to you. Is that right? Yeah. What was the statement? I won't be doing that again. Okay. So he rubs his feces on his face and then he makes the statement to you? Correct. That proves what? What does that even prove? I have no idea that he's faking. Or maybe he doesn't know what the hell he's saying because he's so cracked out of his mind on Halidol. Drives me crazy. Okay, so he doesn't have any further questions. Mr. Rosie has a brief recross here. Um, he asks, then he did it again, didn't he? If he did, that had to be like another shift that I didn't know about. I knew about the one specific time. Do you think that you can tell whether or not somebody has mental health issues by looking them in the eyes? You said it earlier. Well, think you can? Let's put it like this. I'm 38 years old, never been in any trouble, knowing right from wrong. Somebody is mentally ill. I think there are various ways to point out if they are or not. I think that. But do you think you can tell if somebody's mentally ill by looking into their eyes? Not in their eyes, no. Yeah, Rick Allen has a mental illness because he was in that facility. Would you agree with me that being locked up in that 8 by 12 cell was not helping? Judge, can you restate the question? I couldn't hear the beginning. Did you say Richard Allen had a mental health illness? If Rick Allen had a mental health illness when he was locked up in Westville, would you agree with me with that being locked in that 8 by 12 cell for days and weeks and months on end would be detrimental to his mental health? I agree. Right. I'd agree. You said that you knew right from wrong and you'd never been in trouble, right? Correct. But you lied on your job application, didn't you? That's false. It got you fired, didn't it? Judge, I'm gonna object because I'm a weaselly little fucker. Sorry for the language, but he is. Um, Judge, I'm gonna object. It's outside the scope again. This is the second time Mr. Rosie tried to do this. He's blatantly violating the court's orders. Mr. Rosie says he opened the door. He says he knew right from wrong. Sustained. That's beyond the scope. I don't have anything further. The court says, does anybody on the jury have any questions for Mr. Fisher? And it looks like we do have at least one or two questions here. So the court reads them in a sidebar and says, who is Jerome Roby that's listed on the first page of Exhibit 301? Mr. Rosie says, I'm okay with that. The court says companions were allowed to interact with offenders. Did you train and did your training tell you, or is it protocol to try to de-escalate or merely observe and report? Okay with that, says Mr. Rosie. McLeland says I'm okay with that. The court says, why is Brandon testifying for Jerome Roby, which is the name of the companion? And then she says, we're ready. Or we're already something. And Mr. McLeland says, yeah. Mr. Rosie says, already dealt with that. Sidebar concluded. So I don't know what that's about. That Mr. Jerome Roby, is one of the companions and he's testifying for Jerome Roby's statement or something. I don't know. Juror questions now in front of the jurors and everyone in the well. Mr. Fisher, on your first page of the exhibit that you have in front of you, could you tell us who Jerome Roby is? Jerome Roby was another guard. Another guard? Yeah. Any follow up, Mr. McLeland? He says, Mr. Fisher, his name is on the top of the sheet on page 1 of State's Exhibit. He was another guard at the correctional officer at the facility. Is that correct? Correct. But even though his name's on the top of the sheet, are you still the one that made the entries on that sheet? Yeah, these are, except for one. Except for the last one? Except for the last one. But you know you made the other 3 entries. How? I mean, I just wrote them in. Well, I mean, are those your initials on the right-hand side? Yes. Okay. Right. Those are my initials. The prosecutor needed to tell him that. And so you made those 3 entries, the first 3 entries on the first page of the state's exhibit? Yes. Okay. No further questions, Judge. Mr. Rosie, no other questions. Next question. Companions were allowed to talk with and interact with offenders. Is that correct? Yeah, it wasn't any, they didn't tell you, say, hey, don't talk to this guy or this, that, or, and the third. It never happened. What? What kind of answer was that? Mr. McClelland? No questions, Judge. Mr. Rosie, he says 1 second, and then he does have a question. He says, if the warden testified earlier and said it's observation only, would he be wrong? No, he wouldn't. But you say it's okay if they talk to offenders. Observation if you're noticing or if you're writing down stuff that they say. I don't think that's the issue. Companions allowed to go out and tell everybody else on the cell block what's going on in there. Judge, that's outside the scope of the jury question. Mr. Rosie says we're asking about companions. I think it's within the scope. The witness says no. The court says, okay, nothing further, says Mr. Rosie. The next jury question, did your training tell you or is it protocol to try to de-escalate or to merely observe and report? He says, observe and report. So he said he was talking to him all the time. So why was he talking to him? He was just supposed to observe and report. He wasn't supposed to be talking to Richard Allen. I think that these companions are very problematic for the state. Any follow-up? Mr. McClelland says, no, Your Honor. The court says, Mr. Rosie? No. The court says, all right, thank you, sir. You may step down and may I have the exhibit back? Thank you. You may call your next witness. And that's where we're going to end today. And next week, we will pick back up with some more correctional officers. Can you imagine? Oh, so we've been through 6 now, and I think there's only 2 left. Jason Bedwell and Raymond Smith. And then we'll be doing Dr. Wallace's testimony finally. So one more episode of these boring correctional officers who I don't even trust at all. And then we'll get to Dr. Walla eventually. So that's all I have for you guys. Thank you so much for watching, and let me know in the comments below what you think about these correctional officers and their testimony, because I think it's a bunch of hooey. Let me know. Talk to you guys. Thanks so much for watching. Take care. That's the end of this Trial Transcripts Exposed. Thanks for following along with me. Like if you want more, subscribe, and let me know what you think in the comments below. See you next time.